Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Fast am I. Good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Tuesday, 5th of December, 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the island. Background to that news and sport and business and sea watch and travel updates and the newsmakers in person. This evening, the Bishop's vote in Tynwald looks in jeopardy. Developer doesn't want affordable housing in Port Erin. When will the Cancer Support Centre get built? Prosecutions for weapons offences are down again. And the 2026 Commonwealth Games may not happen.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fast am I, Christian Jones.
Fast am I. The new chair of the Office of Fair Trading says Tesco's takeover of ShopRite may not have happened had new legislation been brought in sooner. A consultation's been launched asking for feedback, which hopes to implement harsher rules to prevent anti-competitive practices and allow for investigations on proposed mergers to be carried out. The second reading of a bill that would remove the Bishop's Tynwald vote has received support in the House of Keys. Members backed the Constitution Bill, with 14 voting in favour and 9 against, and the number of prosecutions for weapons offences on the Isle of Man has fallen over the last 3 years. In 2022 to 23, 45 prosecutions for firearms, shotguns and offensive weapons were recorded, down from 48 the year before. In international news, the UK Home Secretary signed a treaty with the Rwandan government to try and remove legal concerns over plans to send asylum seekers there. James Cleverly says the terms mean the East African nation promises not to send anyone to a country where their life would be threatened. Junior doctors in England are going on strike for another 9 days after pay talks broke down. There's a 3-day chunk before Christmas and for further 6 days from the 3rd of January. And campaigners for the victims of the infected blood scandal have delivered a letter to Number 10 calling for faster action on compensation. Last night, MPs voted to set up a new body to help in the process. Those are the Update News headlines. Next at 6.
Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham's private client team. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Gurumaya, thank you, Christian, from the Ronalds Way Met Office. Still got that strong wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea, slight or moderate. And the 3-day weather, well, tonight, cloudy, mostly dry, a moderate to fresh wind coming in from the northeast. Overnight minimum 3 degrees. And for Crane, Wednesday, a dry start after lunch, some rain coming in on a fresh to strong southeasterly, increasing after dark, strong to gale force. Daylight maximums 8 degrees, down to 7 through a wet night. Into Thursday, Jordan, more rain with heavier bursts on the strong to gale force southeasterly. Top temperature 11 degrees. Tides on the way out, low waters at 12 minutes to midnight tonight, high tide 3 minutes after 6 a.m, sunrise 21 minutes past 8, low tide at 4 minutes to midday tomorrow. Tomorrow morning's 8:45 Manxman is scheduled to depart 3/4 of an hour early, but the sailing still remains subject to disruption or cancellation. A final decision to be made by the master at 6:30.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Proposals to remove the Bishop's Tynwald vote will move to the next stage after MHK supported the second reading of the Constitution Bill. 14 MHK supported the private members' bill. From Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper, 9 voted against. Mr Hooper addressed some of the concerns raised by his colleagues this morning.
I'm not entirely sure where the speed concerns come from. First reading, second reading clauses. This is our standard process. I'm not asking the House of Keys to bypass or enhance that in any way. We are simply going through the stages. Mr Smith asked how we find permission to leapfrog the legislative agenda. The reality is you ask permission from this Honourable House. It's that simple. Then you invest some of your own time and energy in doing the job we've been elected to do. That isn't something that I find overly difficult, and again I would suggest Honourable members shouldn't either. Mr Thomas. Oh, Mr Thomas. I'm not really sure how I can respond to the ageism that was very, very clearly present in some of his commentary. Now, I'm getting used to Mr. Thomas's irrelevant and nonsense contributions, so I think the only way to respond is somehow in kind.
One hand, yeah.
A priest, an imam and a rabbit walk into a bar, Mr. Speaker, and the rabbit, being simply advice for comedic value, turns to the audience and says, "You know what, guys,
Mr. Speaker.
Come on, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I actually take that offensive of my honourable colleague there. I find his contribution really valuable, and I think
that's not a point of order. That's a debating point.
How does he get an open
On order. Mr. Hooper has the floor.
Unbelievable.
It's a debating point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like I said, I've tried raising concerns about irrelevance and repetition in the past. It seems sometimes the only way to appropriately deal with them is to respond with more irrelevance and repetition.
I'll set the honourable member straight on that one as well. It's not the solution.
The new OFT chair says Tesco's takeover of ShopRite may not have happened had new legislation been brought in sooner. A consultation's been launched asking for feedback on secondary legislation for the Competition Act. Tim Glover, MHK, has been explaining what it covers.
It's basically empowering the Competition Act, which was passed in 2021 by Tynwald, given royal assent in the same year, but it has to be brought into force with an appointed day order and the necessary secondary legislation. Now, ideally, the gap between primary and secondary would be quite small, but it hasn't been brought forward until now, and I think that was highlighted very effectively when Tesco announced its buyout of ShopRite. So we have got the consultation open at the moment. That runs to the 5th of January. The procedure for hearings in cases where the OFT believes that the parties to a merger were under a duty to notify of that merger but failed to do so. Now, that would have had to have come into effect from Tesco to ShopRite in that case, but of course the secondary legislation wasn't there, so they didn't need to. And it's also the procedure for investigations into proposed mergers. So that secondary legislation ideally will come to Tynwald very early in 2024 once we've heard back from this public consultation, which is open now.
Why was there such a big gap between the primary legislation and now this secondary legislation?
I think it was basically because the OFT had other duties and other issues that they were dealing with at the time, and it was always there ready to come forward. Obviously, recent events have made that very necessary to bring forward, and I'm certainly pushing for that to come into effect.
Do you think that in reality this shouldn't have happened and this legislation should have been in place then?
I don't. I am seeking to have just an introductory informal chat with Tesco so we can introduce ourselves to them and really take that relationship from there.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
The president of the Isle of Man Commonwealth Games Association says there's still hope for the future of the event. Australia's Gold Coast has dropped its bid for the 2026 Games, and there are signs it could be missed for the first time since the Second World War. Basil Bielig hopes Manx athletes will keep the event in mind when training.
I think as costs related to hosting a multi-sport games increase, it becomes more difficult for host cities to actually motivate and see what return they're going to get from hosting the games. I know Birmingham did very well from the games, although, they've had their problems. The local council has had its problems, but the city itself did benefit hugely from hosting the games. So it's getting that a message across. And I think the sporting calendar is also becoming more and more congested. So the Commonwealth Games are competing with other sports as well for time slots to hold the games. The Commonwealth Games Federation is looking at all options. So they might have sporting competitions in various regions or a different format of the games where it's not all the sports in one place and at the same time. So they could have held it in various different countries in every 4 years. So the whole nature of the Commonwealth Games is going to change. I think the way we've had it in the past, I'd be very surprised if it's still the same sort of format. So from an athlete's point of view, there is still hope. And I'd encourage all athletes to carry on training and carry on having that aim of getting to a Games and representing the Isle of Man at that Games.
The number of prosecutions for weapons offences on the Isle of Man has fallen over the past 3 years. Figures published by the Home Affairs Minister show there were 45 prosecutions for firearms, shotguns and offensive weapons offences in 2022-23. The news from Sean Cowper.
It's a fall from 48 compared with the year before and down from 61 in the 2020 to 21 period. The success rate for prosecutions has also fallen, with 51% of cases resulting in prosecutions last year, down from 62% 2 years earlier. The most common offence was possessing an offensive weapon in a public place, which accounted for 19 of the 45 prosecutions secured last year. It's a small rise compared to the 2021 to 22 period, when there were 17 prosecutions for the same offence, but down from the year before, when 23 prosecutions were recorded. The figures have been released following a Tynwald written question from Douglas North MHK David Ashford, who requested statistics relating to possession or use of a knife. In her response, Jane Poole-Wilson said there is no specific offence relating to knives, and as such the police don't include the nature of the weapon used when they record crimes.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor vessel Manxman left Heysham at 2:15. She'll be into the bay fairly shortly and onto the link span in the next 15 minutes, departing this evening at 7:45, arriving in Heysham around 11:30. The overnight departure's 2:15, back to Douglas at 6 tomorrow morning, and tomorrow morning's 8:45. Manxman to Heysham will now leave at 8 a.m. You're advised to check in no later than 7:15, and the sailing still remains subject to disruption or cancellation. A final decision by the master at 6:30. Obviously, if the boat doesn't go, won't be coming back at 2:15 tomorrow. And tomorrow evening's 7:45, Manxman to Heysham, again is subject to possible disruption or cancellation. A final decision at 5:30 tomorrow from the master.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
Preliminary discussions have taken place between the Department of Infrastructure and a developer who doesn't want to build affordable housing on a brownfield site in Port Erin. The story from Tessa Hawley.
Ocean Castle Limited, which is part of the Tavere Group, has asked for taxpayer-backed support through the Island Infrastructure Scheme. It's submitted planning to build an apartment block on the former site of the Ocean Castle Hotel. The development is required to contain 9.5 affordable housing units. However, in its planning application, the group says it would be challenging to viably accommodate such units on site, and as a result, it doesn't believe it's suitable for them. The Tavere Group has blamed increasing building costs, which it says have resulted in the viability of the scheme being threatened. Meetings have been held with the Department of Infrastructure and Port Erin commissioners to discuss the perceived issues and for the group to explain its view. In the application, which is pending consideration, the Tavere Group says its preferred approach would be to reach an agreement in respect of a commuted sum, adding it believes that would be more appropriate. The DOI has now told Manx Radio it will accept commuted sums from a developer in lieu of affordable housing where there's a lack of demand for a particular area or a certain property type. Another key reason the department says is if likely additional costs will fall on apartment purchases, such as annual service charges or ground rents, which might place too great a financial burden on first-time buyers at a time when they can least afford it. The DOI says it's in the process of assessing possible future demand for affordable apartments in Port Erin before a final decision is made. It adds the amount of commuted sum for the Ocean Castle application has not yet been assessed. When received from developers, commuted sums are paid into a Department of Infrastructure Housing Reserve Fund, which is used exclusively for supporting the development or refurbishment of affordable housing.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 5:45 in corporate news, SSP, the multinational contract food service company headquartered in London, gained as the food and beverage travel outlet operator reinstated its dividend and reported a near doubling of annual core profits driven by the continued resurgence resurgence of passenger numbers and workers returning to offices. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. For the first time in over a decade, new billionaires from inheritance outnumber the self-made billionaires. According to a report from UBS, the Swiss bank says 53 heirs inherited a total of $150.8 billion in the year ended to April, compared with $140.7 billion amassed by 84 newly made billionaires from entrepreneurship over that time. In part due to a slower IPO market, the number of billionaires in the world rose 7%, while their combined wealth climbed 9% to $12 trillion. The wealth of billionaires in the most recent year fell short of the $13.4 trillion reached in 2021, when a post-pandemic rally in shares and asset values occurred. Europe led the growth in billionaire wealth for the first time as luxury goods companies surged. UBS found that billionaire heirs were less interested in philanthropy than first-generation billionaires.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets were mixed as some of the momentum that powered a stellar month subsided. US stocks mixed on the heels of fresh jobs data. Oil rose and gold was lower. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London for the FTSE 100 down 0.3%, 7,489. The DAX in Frankfurt was up just over 0.75% at 16,533. A short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial down 0.3% at 36,096. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index in Chicago is down 0.33% at 14,230. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 25.8 cents, €1 16.6 cents, and 23 South African rand 92 cents. In commodities, gold's down 0.7% at $2,014 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up almost 0.5% at $78.55.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
A Manx charity is questioning the amount of time it's taking to get government clearance to build a state-of-the-art cancer support centre on the Isle of Man. Mannin Cancer Support Group's waiting on the disposal of land to be signed off. The charity's president is David Gorn.
I think, obviously, one of the things that's got to be taken into consideration is, quite rightly, that this is government land and government regulations have got to be adhered to, and government have got to do their due diligence and make sure that we are a proper organisation, that we're properly set up, that we have got the money, because nothing could be worse than us saying, yes, we're going to build this, we get it half up, and then suddenly we run out of cash and say we can't afford to finish it, or we say, well, we've built it but we can't afford to run it. So they need to make sure they're doing that. But it's just, I think it's the length of time that it's taken, and the stumbling block at the moment seems to be getting exemption from government financial regulations. Now, government financial regulations, as I understand it, says that if government want to give this, there are certain things that have to be done, and that's what we're waiting for at the moment. And obviously, too, it's in such a high-profile position in front of the hospital, they have to be happy with everything. Now, the plans are absolutely amazing. We just want to get on with it and get it open. It's a 52-week build. We had originally hoped to get started after TT. We always knew that was a bit ambitious. That was always, but we had hoped we would get on site within August. We're now hoping that we will get on site in this month, because before the building can commence, there's got to be some site development work done, including the trees, and that will probably take 3 or 4 weeks. So what we're hoping now is to be able to start building in early mid-January. That would then enable us to finish the building works in January 2025 with the ability to actually start using it, have it open in Easter 2025, and with the formal opening probably in summer 2025. So it's all happening.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates. Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, Rob Pritchard.
Fast am I. Good evening. Starting with hockey, and this year's Isle of Man indoor hockey champions have been crowned following the finals for the 2023 season. 6 trophies were decided during games at the NSC on Saturday across the mixed, men's and ladies divisions. In the men's premiership, Backers A claimed the top spot with a 7-5 victory over Vikings A, whilst the ladies premiership title went the way of Valkyries A, who were 5-3 winners over Vikings A. For the 2 Division 1 titles, Vikings B were 7-5 victors over Harlequins in the men's final, with Harlequins claiming the ladies' trophy after overcoming Backers B 7-5. Elsewhere, a thrilling final contest took place for the mixed premiership between Vikings A and Castletown A, with the former just about tasting success after a narrow 6-5 win over the southern side. It was then even closer in the battle for the mixed Division 1 title, as Harlequins and Valkyries played out a 4-all draw in regular time, with Harlequins going on to take the trophy 2-1 on penalty strokes. The Manx Hockey Association is also thanking the umpires and technical staff for making sure the respective matches went ahead smoothly. In boxing, members of Manx ABC were on the road at the weekend as they faced off against a Merseyside select team in Bootle in what was the club's biggest squad for an away trip so far. Merseyside went on to claim an overall victory 8-4, which included 7 split decision verdicts. Also on the night, Jay Burden's bout was called off as her opponent was unavailable. Manx ABC says despite the tough result overall on the night, the team did the island and the club proud. And finally tonight in snooker, Q-Zone Blinders have kept their lead at the top of the Max Builders Merchant Snooker League despite suffering defeat in the latest round of fixtures. They went down 4-1 to Finch Hill Musicians A. Finch Hill Musicians B beat Finch Hill Mob 3-2 to move up to second in the standings, ahead of Jackson's, who had a bye this week. There were victories elsewhere for Q-Zone Masters, Port St Mary Legion, Peel Legion and Maloo.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Fingers crossed, looking good at the airport. The 7:30 inbound EasyJet from London Gatwick's on time. 10-8 Loganair from London City, and the 5-8 returning patient transfer Loganair from Liverpool. Outbound 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool on time, and the 8 EasyJet back to Gatwick looking fine. Temporary lights on the main road at Colby at the junction with Ballakill Ferrick Road for water main work. The Clanet Road in Solby's closed for resurfacing. Hillside Avenue closed to Circular Road in Douglas for adjacent office window replacement. Temporary lights on Groves Road at the Springfield Avenue junction for sewer lining work. A section of Switzerland Road in Douglas is closed for construction work for a year. Temporary lights on Bratton Road in Bratton between the hospital and Strang Road for work on the pavements. Cian Drockard Road in Andros closed in phases for water main work. Temporary lights on the Andros Road in St Jude's to the north of St Jude's for patching work. Temporary lights on the Dalby Road between Erie, Cushlin and the Round Table for drainage work. The Aracy Road from Glen May to the Shoulders closed for resurfacing. And temporary 24 hours lights on the Dalby Road for ducting work. South of Kirkmichael, temporary closures on the Ballalai Road for water main work. And in Regaby, the Ballacory Road is closed for tree trimming.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. The Infrastructure Minister's admitted the horse tram shortened route could have played a part in a significant reduction in passengers this season. Tim Crookall was in Keys this morning.
There were some 78,000 passenger journeys on the Douglas Bay horse tram recorded in 2018 compared to 45,000 in 2023. It is not known if this reduction in numbers can be attributed to the shorter length of track, and obviously we're still recovering, getting over from the prom reconstruction and COVID. The department's direct income from the horse tram service in 2018 was £140,000 against £44,000 in 2023. However, it must be noted that many more of our passengers now use multi-trip tickets, which have seen an increase of 42% in income since 2018, and this figure does not include any contribution from the Go Explore tickets. With regards to government funding, there is no specific capital budget for the horse trams, and the revenue expenditure budget for operating the horse trams has reduced from £340,140 in 2018 to £313,808 this year, which is a reduction of £26,332. I think it's obvious that there's a shortage from Loch Promenade in particular, and there where the tram track does not now go. The difference between 2018 and this year, the loss, if you like, from 2018 was £200,140 as opposed to £269,000 this year. So it's an increase of around about £69,000, which is fairly substantial, I would suggest, Mr. Speaker. But I think it is fairly obvious that it has made a difference not having the prom tracks. To me personally, I think it's made a difference not having the tram tracks the whole way. But that will be a decision for this honourable place to take at some stage in the future.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update 8 on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Faster by Diabetes Isle of Man says planned improvements to the diabetes service on the island will be amazing when they come to fruition. Manx Care says it's applying for funding to develop a retinal eye screening facility and for more advanced technology to help people who live with diabetes. From Diabetes Isle of Man, Natasha Parry.
I think that's a really positive step. Obviously, it feels like it's been a long time coming for the people of the island that are living with the condition. So any move towards a service being in place is just really positive. So, that's great. And we look forward to seeing that service in place, hopefully next year. All changes within healthcare come with a cost often. And we understand that there isn't an endless pot of money. But investment in this technology now will prevent further spending in the future on the likes of complications due to poor blood sugar control and poor management. So yes, it's really positive that they are looking into it in terms of a funding option, but it's really to see that the money is actually going to be saved in the future. So it's a saving, really.
What kind of timeline would you like to see?
If I can come in to Manx Radio on World Diabetes Day 2024 and there's a real indent in these services, there's been, hopefully the eye screening service will be in place, or at least in the final stages of being in place, and if people are feeling supported with the condition, then that's absolutely a win for us. We understand things don't happen overnight, but within a year's time, if I can come in and things have greatly improved, then that would be amazing.
That's it for Update Tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Christian Jones, producer Amy Griffiths. After the news at 6, the award-winning news team from Manx Radio and Chris Kinley's here at 6:30 with the greatest hits.
WINT Manx Radio, your Christmas station.